they would then, I'd take 3 steps and run and jump, and I'd race along the ground, and then they'd fly me up, fly me to the other side, then we go back and we do it again. A Greatest American Hero was always considered a comedy. In fact, talking with the late great Stephen Cannell, I mean, he always thought about it as they would sit around the writers' table and they would say, okay, let's think of a really great, funny situation, whether it be ego. Ego is a very funny thing, or hypochondria, thinking that you're sick. And somebody thinks that they're sick, and that could be really, really funny. So they would think of a very funny scenario, and then they would back a plot into that. At least that's the way Stephen told it. I always thought of him as kind of the reluctant hero, you know. Bob CULP was the grit and the gravity of the show. Connie Seliga was the beauty and the brains, and I was kind of the fool. You know, the reluctant, although he had a moral compass, and I think that kept the show centered. You know, the traditional great comedies, buddy comedies, I mean, your 2 leads are always, you know, butting heads. You know, that's what gives it that dramatic tension and makes it kind of funny. And then Connie was always the one in the middle, kind of holding us apart like that, you know. But that's very, that's very typical of any buddy comedy. When you look at 48 Hours, or you look at, you know, Butch and Sundance. I mean, you look at all the great buddy comedies. That's what they did. There was some kind of tension there. I hated it in the show. I hated it in real life. You know, it's funny when Steve Cannell came to New York. I was doing a play off Broadway. I was doing a Michel Tremblay play. With the wonderful Diana Wiest, and he gave me the script, and it was a wonderful script. Just I fell in love with it. Laugh out loud. We went out to dinner that night after the show, and I agreed to do it. But we always avoided the suit. I don't know. I just thought it would look better. But when he showed me the suit, he said, "You ready to see the suit?" I said, "Sure." So he shows me the suit. The designer comes out and holds it up, and I was just mortified because it wasn't as cool as everything that you see now. You know, I mean, it just wasn't cool. It wasn't Robert Downey in Iron Man. This suit was just it sagged in all the wrong places. So when I put it on, and in the TV show, in the pilot, when I turn around and I look in the mirror and I look at myself, I'm mortified. And that's Bill Katt looking at himself, the actor Bill Katt, saying, "There goes my career." That's what I was feeling at the time. I didn't really think about doing television, but and particularly doing something a sci-fi show that had kind of a comedy bent to it. Boy, there was a lot of potential ramifications that came with that. You have to realize it didn't come with that the cachet that it has now. You know, Ed Norton did the Hulk. You know, you have Ron Perlman did Hellboy. You know, Michelle Pfeiffer did Catwoman. On and on and on. George Clooney did Batman. We didn't have that then. That when you did a character like that back then in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, there was a real stigma attached to it. And so that's what I was feeling when I was looking at myself and what I thought about the show early on. It wasn't until many, many, many years later that the stigma was raised and there was new respect being paid to the show, and I really felt vindicated at that point. But only recently, only in the last, 5-10 years. Oh, you were put in a box. I mean, you were put in a box, you know. For years, I had been doing a lot of regional theater, very good regional theater, working with Tony Award winners and Pulitzer Prize winners, Marcia Norman Jack Hoffs, who won a Tony for Elephant Man. And I'd been working with great people, and when I did Greatest American Hero, it really put the brakes on a lot of work that I did on stage, because now I was that guy in the red suit, you know. And it took many, many years to get over that, but it doesn't affect me now. Now it's a great quiver, a great arrow in my quiver. Stephen got the biggest kick in the world out of watching me squirm in that suit. He just thought he was tickled constantly. He'd laugh and he'd go, "I'm glad I don't have to wear that thing."
And that was part of the character. It was just,
but it was. Yeah, it was. I mean, that was the whole setup. Yeah. Well, I think that ultimately that was one of the downfalls of the show, is that Stephen made a promise to me when we did that show that we would not be chasing monsters through the sewers of Los Angeles. And so he really made a valiant attempt not to do that. And it was more satirical in nature and more of a highbrow approach to comedy. And the powers that be at the networks really saw it as something, they wanted to cater more to kids. And I think that Steve and then later on Frank Lupo and some of the other wonderful producer writers that came on, they got it. They wanted to see if they could strike a balance and cater to both ends. But the networks were constantly trying to squash it down. And we began to fight about it. I mean, there was some political fights going on, and I'm not privy to all of that, because as an actor, you seem to be you're protected from all of that. But I do know in the years that followed, I talked about it with Stephen, about what really was going on behind the scenes, and Bob CULP was involved in those conversations. Bob definitely wanted to keep it really highbrow and smart. Well, chasing monsters through the sewers is lowbrow, and when you are dealing with the legal system and trying to do something there and making it a funny situation, I mean, that's more intelligent. It's that's more highbrow to me. First and foremost, Robert Culp thought of himself as a writer first, a director second, and an actor third. And when you look at his biography or you look at his IMDb page, you see that he has a great deal of work as a writer and a director. And he was accomplished at both of those things. So he had that to bring to the show, aside from his very wonderful, gritty, hard-boiled nature. That grit that he brought to the show, it was fantastic. And we truly did not like each other when we first met. I mean, there was some real friction there. And remarkably enough, it was just another one of those things that it worked because the two characters were not supposed to like each other. And we didn't like each other. And it wasn't till, I would say, 3 weeks into the pilot, we had a kind of a come to Jesus meeting in his trailer, and we decided that we're going to be working together for a long time, and we should have some sort of a détente and rapprochement so that we could work together and be in the same space at the same time without getting into a fight. So we did, and I think it really worked out. We ended up being very good friends, and we worked the day he died. He had a problem with me. I mean, this was Bob Culp. I mean, this was the star of I Spy and Bob Carroll, Ted and Alice, and countless other wonderful television and film projects. And he had written so many wonderful things. I think Bob wanted to have first billing, you know? And I think that was a big problem initially. And I kept saying, Bob, it's not the Greatest American Hero in Friends, you know? It's Greatest American Hero. But he was a really good sport, and you know, we worked that out fairly quickly, and Stephen always had such a great sense of humor about it, and we made nice. It was okay. Well, it was fun, and you know, I never watched the shows very much when I was doing them years ago because there was never any time. We were always working. But when the DVDs came out 5 years ago or so, I looked at many of the shows, and I was really pleasantly surprised at just the looks that we gave, and when the camera was, you had no words, but the camera was on the three of us, Connie, Bob, and I. Just the looks that were going on, the interaction between the people, the chemistry, if you will, was just. It just tickled me. It was so great. And a few years ago, we all got together in 2008, and we went down to the Comic-Con. I was launching a comic book to try and tell some other stories about the suit that we never got to tell. And Bob and Connie and I were all sitting around the table, and we were talking and visiting, and Bob says, "Do you feel it?" We still got it. Because the chemistry was just spot on. It was the same thing. We just all fell right back into it without even trying, you know? I think that's one of the things, and when I see a great show on the air now, and there's so many good shows on the air right now, but it's really, sometimes you get really lucky, the producers, the casting directors, and it's just like lightning in a bottle when you get the right cast together. You can't explain it. It just works. When you get two actors together, and it just works. You know, you see it in film all the time. You get two actors together that are really terrific together, and they're better together than they are apart. You know, it was why, you know, Abbott and Costello worked, or so many other guys like that. Even, you know, that's why it works. In an interview, sometimes you get a great interview, and sometimes you don't, and it really is the chemistry and the repartee and other people listening to the other person, you know. So many interviewers, the interviewer isn't really listening. He's just looking at his list to ask his next question, you know, so it's not spontaneous. We did grow over the show. I think that we grew as people, you know. We just, what invariably happens is that when you play these parts every day and you come to the set and you get to know each other, you know what buttons to push, what works, what doesn't work, what to stay away from, what you can get away with, how you can stretch certain things. And I think because of that, your confidence grows. And when not your ego, your confidence in those characters and in that show grows. And I think when you become more comfortable and your confidence grows, the show just invariably gets better. Just in the short time we were doing the show, in those 3 years, the first, for the pilot, we were still at Paramount. We had taken a large space at Paramount. So at the end of the shooting, I forget, was it the end or the beginning? I think it was the beginning of the show, before we had started the main production unit. They had painted just an enormous soundstage blue, because it was all blue then. Now the chroma is chroma green, but primarily then it was all blue. And they had taken this whole stage and painted it blue. The ceilings, the walls, the floor, everything. So you had like 120 feet or however long it was, and 50 feet, 70 feet wide. And then we did a rig where I wore a harness, and on these, they would put these piano wires, very thick piano wires, and you would pretty much tilt and balance on these piano wires. And you had to learn how to, you know, the circus uses it all the time. And they would then, I'd take 3 steps and run and jump, and I'd race along the ground, and then they'd fly me up, fly me to the other side, then we'd go back and we'd do it again. And I'd jump up, I'd do landings, I'd do takeoffs and this and that. And at one time, actually, I was up 35 feet in the air and a piano wire broke, and I'm spinning around on one piano wire. It was very scary. But I was brave. And we got it done. I'm getting sidetracked. But the point of the story is we started off in blue screen doing that, and by the end of the second season, they had already progressed to where they were doing stuff in a computer. So so instead of the camera moving and me moving, I would sit on a green screen platform. I had this part of my body was made in a mold, and I'd put the suit around the mold, and I would lay there, and the camera would then move around me, and I would not move, and that's how they did it. I never had a day off. I was working 5 days a week, at least 14 hours a day, many times 15 hours a day, 16 hours a day, and Bob and Connie would always have a day off a week because I would be shooting blue screen or a green screen, and I was, at the end of those 3 years, I was so tired. I never saw my family. When I did have days off, I'd be on a plane flying somewhere to do a special event or make a speech. I got to do some wonderful, commencement exercises, and I talked to a convention of mayors one time about what it is to be a hero and what really heroes are. That was a great moment in my life that I remember very well. I got to do a lot of work with children at the time, special needs children, crippled children. That was one of the great things. I had been raised doing that. My father was a cowboy star, and he used to take me when I was a kid. He would do a lot of work for the Crippled Children's Society, and I liked that. So it was, but it was a full-time job, and at the end of those 3 years, I was tired. I didn't want to work anymore for a while. Didn't do any TV right after that. The flaws of the guy. Well, Ralph was always, because I think I brought that to the party. We're all flawed to some degree, and I thought that he allowed me to bring those flaws and those insecurities that Bill Katt has as a person. He allowed me to imbibe the character with all of those same things, So a lot of that character, Ralph Hinckley, was a great deal of who I was at the time. A very flawed young man that ran the gamut of being very insecure and being overly egocentric and self-centered, and he worked in that area, and there was a lot of funny stuff to mine. And I think Stephen Cannell, as he got to know me, he started writing for it, which I think happens on any good show. The writers get to know the actors, and they start saying, "Oh, I got an idea. Let's let him do this," and that's what happened. Well, Connie Selica was never going to be a regular on that TV show. But what happened is, and Stephen told me this story, he said, so I think it's common knowledge that Connie was set to just do the pilot show, and they were going to have Ralph was going to have revolving girlfriends. But the chemistry was so good, and she was so terrific in the first 5 days that he called the network and he made a series deal for her. Robert was always a mentor in my life. Everything, the better things that I've learned as a writer over the years, because we used to do a lot of rewriting on that show. Not so much the intent of the scene, but we used to do dialogue for our characters and make things funnier and know when to be funny and when not to be funny. One of the things I learned with Bob was that there was a time to be funny in the show, and then there was a time not to do funny stuff. Not to be funny, to be serious, to play the truth, to ride that fence between being truthful and pushing the line to comedy. When we always play it for the truth, and I learned that from Bob. He was just terrific. He was a mentor in many respects. Stephen Cannell was a mentor to me, one of the greatest men I've ever known in my life. And the father-son stories, I don't know, it's common knowledge. Stephen lost his oldest son, Derek, on that show in the second year, who was just a wonderful kid, beautiful boy, and I don't think Steve ever recovered, and I think that played into a lot of the heart of the show, particularly in the second and the third years, of the show.
So you're seeing that story reflected in some of the greatest American hero stories?
Oh yeah, yeah, in very subtle ways, in very subtle ways. How can it not? How can it not? Just in the tone of the scripts and the way there would be shadows of sadness in the show at times, the way the comedy would go, not in any maudlin sense. I mean, Steve recovered to some degree. I mean, you heal over long periods of time. You never forget, but you begin to heal, and but I think the show, because of the time, really it meant a lot. The show meant a lot to him because of the period of time that happened in his life. It was before A-Team, and anyway. They put us on opposite Dallas, which was the #1 show at the time on Friday night, and that's, as soon as they did that, kiss it goodbye, it was over. What I think surprised them was how well it did in syndication, and it was about 1.5 years, 2 years later that, or maybe even less, that I got a call, and they said, let's put it on the air for 2 years, and we'll guarantee you 24 shows a season for a couple of years. And I said, but by that time I was working doing the Perry Mason specials with NBC, and enjoying the fact that I was only doing 4 TV movies a year, and I had an opportunity to do some theater and some other things. And so I wasn't really, I looked at that, and it was a lot less money than what they were offering me, but I had a life. And I just, I didn't try to extricate myself from that and go back and do Hero again. In retrospect, someone should have slapped me. But that's what I was feeling at the time.
Because they should have slapped you because...
Because I was the idiot. I should have done the show again. I should have done the show again. But, oh well. I don't know. It struck a chord with the public, with particularly sci-fi and fantasy fans. And there wasn't all these conventions years ago in the early '80s and whatnot. I mean, started with the Star Trek conventions and whatnot, and kind of branched out from that, and and DC and Marvel and all all the other comic book companies. They just It really became something that was unexpected. I mean, they are the best fans. When I've done some of these conventions that I've done, I mean, they're just wonderful fans, very loyal, No, I like them. I like them. I like them all for different reasons. I like the Plague. I like the pilot was pretty funny. I thought that Fastball was pretty funny. I like the idea of someone that throws a pitch and he's pretty good, and he starts to think that he's a lot better than he was. I liked my heroes have always been cowboys, because my dad was a cowboy star, and I think that meant a lot to me. And there was so many good episodes. The Beast in Black was a great episode because it paid homage to Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, and those were always, some of my favorite shows growing up. I like that. Well, I grew up watching Superman. I love Superman. I mean, I every day I watched that show when I was growing up. And later on, I mean, I was a fan of the Bionic Man, and I did enjoy that show. That was a lot of fun. I liked the slow motion and the running sequences and stuff, and and I loved the sound effects were different, you know. I loved Batman, the Adam West show that he did, Burt Ward. I thought that was fabulous. I had a lot of fun watching that show. Again, it's probably wish fulfillment. It's the guy is always, he never loses a case. He's just brilliant. He is, Earl Stanley Gardner was just one of the great writers. I mean, he was so prolific. He wrote so many books. He had such a wide audience out there. And I think that, you know, played right into it. You know, he had an audience already out there waiting. So when the show came out, it struck a nerve and became a show that you couldn't miss every week. For 9 years, it was just a huge hit. And still to this day, my mom gets lots of fan mail. I can't wait. I had heard that, you know, recently it had been rumored that Robert Downey was maybe being touted to recreate that part. And I can't think of a better actor that has more gravity than him that would be better for that role. I mean, just fantastic. And I think every week what was fun is that you could sit around the TV with your family and go, he did it. Oh, no, she did it, she did it. Oh, no, and they throw you red herrings and there's plot twists and this and that. And I just think that it was a lot of fun, you know? It was a lot of fun. Well, at the time, Brian De Palma and George Lucas were, for whatever reason, I don't know, you'd have to ask them, they decided they were going to hold their auditions together. Probably because they were each seeing all the young leading men and leading women at the time, anyone from 19 to 25. They saw everybody that, you know, had been recommended to them as the up-and-coming young actors in Hollywood at the time. So the first time I met them, we were ushered in, and we met both of them, and I guess they each had a list, and they marked down, oh, we'll see him for this. I'll put him on my list. And Brian would say, well, I'm going to put this person on my list. And we went through a series of 3 meetings, I think. And then I guess I got on both lists, you know. And I was lucky enough to do a reading with Kurt Russell, and I think I blew it for him. He could have been a great Han Solo, and then again, my hair was too long then. It's too long now, and we didn't get the part. But I thought that we did a pretty good job, you know. And looking back at it, and my booby prize was Carrie, and I got to play Tommy Ross and Carrie, so that wasn't such a bad booby prize. I just always try to be aspects of myself, you know. And I think where I've gotten in trouble, and I've seen work in the aftermath that I thought was untruthful, is when I tried to stretch too far. But when I've been truthful to myself, and my performance has a ring of truth about it, whether albeit in comedy or in drama, I've done okay. Am I methody? I guess I have been methody, but I don't think of myself as a method actor. I just think of myself as I try to be present and truthful. That's what I try and do. Probably not with me in it, but I would imagine with a young, handsome actor, or maybe that's paying myself too much compliment. Young and handsome, no, I never was that. No, but a young, funny guy that could make it work. You know, I think there's a possibility for that. Before Stephen died, I know he was developing and I read a terrific script that Paul Hernandez, a wonderful young writer, had written, and it was being bantered around that it was going to be made. I don't know what's going to happen now. I saw Mike DeBelco, Stephen's partner, not too long ago when we were celebrating Stephen's 1-year passing. It was just last month. and at his memorial kind of gathering with some close friends and Marcia, his wife, and a couple of his kids, and we sat around, we talked about it, and Mike wasn't really sure what, or at least he didn't let me know what was going on with that film. But I hope it gets made because it deserves to be made, and there's some great parts for some young actors out there that I'd love to see.